Welcome to Rialto Channel's Real Women podcast. I'm Francesca Rudkin. Throughout March and April, Rialto Channel is focusing on female actors and filmmakers who shine the spotlight on the talent and importance of the female perspective in film. In this podcast, local actors and filmmakers share their stories. Today, my guest is Jennifer Ward-Lealand. Since training at Auckland's Theatre Corporate, Jennifer Ward-Lealand has worked extensively in theatre, film, television, musicals and radio for almost 40 years. Jennifer was a founding board member of the Watershed Theatre and a co-founder of the drama school, The Actors Program. She is president of Equity New Zealand and patron of Q Theatre. In the 2007 New Year's Honours List, she was named an ONZM for services to theatre and the community. In 2019, she was named as a companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit for services to theatre, film and television. And Jennifer joins me now. Welcome, Jennifer. Thanks so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Now, you have played such a pivotal role in the celebration and the support of arts in New Zealand throughout your career. Where does this sense of service come from?
I would say that comes from my family. I think it's sort of a genetic thing. I think we are very much about sharing the love, and I feel that as somebody in my position in the industry who really benefited from many years of training that a lot of people don't get now, that it is my duty to support arts institutions and people and individuals and schools and whatever, who've chosen what is not an easy life. So, yeah, I think that really is sort of embedded in me since I was a child.
Who did inspire and support you when you were starting out? I mean, I know in the late 70s there was Close to Home on TV, and you were active in the youth theatre. Mm-hmm. Who inspired and supported you in the early days?
Well, when I look back, I have to say that being brought up in a musical family was a huge influence on me. So we'd go to my grandparents' place, and they would, after Sunday dinner, it was called then, Sunday dinner at lunchtime, grandfather would be playing the piano, and my mother was a pianist and my grandmother was a singer. And I'm just saying the arts were extremely important to us. Reading was always important. So I feel like I had, a natural affinity to those things. And really, I guess it just outed in a way through theatre. So I went to my first rehearsal as a 7-year-old with my dad, who was so I would say he was a profound influence, because if he hadn't been in this show and they needed some children in it was a Greek tragedy called Oedipus, he wouldn't have taken me along to that rehearsal room, which is at the top of what is now Bats Theatre. And I walked in and got this had this epiphany that this is where I belonged. So you could say that the love of the arts was already there, and it was just expressed through theatre. And in terms of influences, I would say once I started going to drama school at Theatre Corporate at age 19, all of my teachers there and my directors who were teaching directors, I think that has made me the performer that I am, and made me want to teach and direct in the way that I do, which is all about imparting craft along the way.
Were there women directors back then, Jennifer, theatre directors?
Oh, yes.
That inspired you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I mean, Raymond Hawthorne would be one. And Michael Hurst is another one. Even though I'm married to him, he was 5 years older than me, and I was, being directed by him in various things. I mean, a number of the people really who trained in the theatre corporate way would be the most influential on me in terms of expanding my craft. And then, of course, I've just my list would be never ending, and if I started, I'd miss out somebody. But really, most of the directors I've worked with, recently I worked with Shane Boscher on a cabaret show of German cabaret music from the late 20s, early 30s, and we had a wonderful time. And there's someone who can articulate what he wants to see in the performer, and in me in particular, that I found really wonderfully refreshing and challenging, and made me, dig into areas that perhaps I wouldn't have without that instruction.
You mentioned earlier it's a tough career. It's a tough industry to be in. You mentor, you teach, you direct, you perform, you sing. It's not the kind of industry in which you can sit back and wait for things to happen, is it? Would that be fair to say?
That would be very fair to say. Yes, indeed. In fact, I'm probably the last, maybe the second to last generation who came out of the theatre and went into a company and basically worked for years and years and years doing play after play after play, 12 plays a year or something. So, and now performers come out of drama school, they're lucky if they get one play, paid work in one play, which might be 4 weeks, might be 7 weeks. And they have to create a lot of work. So, that's a good thing, and that you have to be creative. And I've done it myself and created my own shows because I'm not going to sit around and wait for something to happen. But actors do need to be versatile and keep their learning up and continue to be curious. I've recently diversified. I've been training as an intimacy coordinator in stage and screen work, and particularly, and this sort of goes back to your point about it being a tough profession, firstly, you have to get used to a lot of people saying no to you. Also, the fact that 85 to 90% of actors are unemployed at any one time. That's to a certain extent the nature of the beast, because you have to have a large pool of people to choose from. But it does mean that, rejection is part and parcel of the work. And also, our mental health statistics are 4 times worse than the general population. Now, in terms of intimacy on stage and screen, obviously, I'm not saying actors are special, but the work we do is special, and work in the intimate zone is something that, is a part of an actor's work. We do that. But the way that it is done can make a profound difference on how much that can affect your mental health. So there have been plenty of, I don't think there's really any actor who hasn't had some uncomfortable experience, or even just not a creative experience. It's not that they've all been awful or anything, but just not a creative experience. And so seeing the profound difference that having a process like this, that has consent at the heart of it, that has a very clear strategy to creating these scenes in the same way that you would with a stunt, a stunt in a film or on stage. Seeing the profound difference that makes is just incredibly rewarding, and was really the reason why I thought, well, I have to do this work, because I experienced how good it was myself and what a difference it made, how clean it was.
It does seem like a very obvious thing to do, Jennifer, but is it quite a new thing to happen on set?
Newish, yes.
Yeah.
It's probably been around since sort of 2015, but it really has come to the fore in the last few years. And certainly I'm working on 3 different productions at the moment, and Tandy Wright, who's also trained in this area, she is on one, and there's very few of us at the moment, and we obviously need to get more people trained up. But the industry is now realizing that it is crucial.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel, according to, there was some research released last year by Creative New Zealand and New Zealand On Air, talking about creative professionals struggling to make a living in New Zealand. How do you feel about this as president of Equity New Zealand?
Well, I think one of the things that we could change that would make a big difference is the current immigration policy, which means that nobody from overseas needs to apply for a letter of non-objection from the union if they're working here under 14 days. Now, 14 days is kind of a spurious figure, Francesca, because you could do a lead role in a film in 4 days. You could. There is plenty of stuff you can do in 4 hours. But if New Zealanders are bypassed because you can get X, Y, Z from overseas without having to go through any non-objection process, then New Zealanders are missing out on opportunities. So that's a very, very practical way that we could, because it's not that we're involved in it's important to clarify here. We don't want to be involved in the casting process, but we want our actors to have the opportunity to be seen. And the fewer auditions there are, then the fewer actors are seen, the fewer opportunities they get. So, every American actor that's brought over to do a nice sort of, guest role that's maybe 5 days of a shoot, and then sent back home again is another role that a New Zealander doesn't do. And then, of course, that's the sort of, self-fulfilling prophecy where, because actors aren't being seen, there's an idea that the actors aren't talented here, even though the person coming over might be just as much of a jobbing actor as anybody here. It's just they were in England or UK or whatever, in America or whatever. So that's a practical thing. Obviously, funding has an enormous effect on how much work can get done. So many actors are doing stuff on the smell of an oily rag or self-funding projects. So we would like to see a much bigger pool so that there could be much more work for people to apply for funding for. And and obviously professional development is a huge thing for us to keep our skills up. We would like there to be a ready, match fit pool of actors down here ready to use for offshore productions that come in.
And Jennifer, do you feel that women are well represented in theatre and film at the moment?
I would say it's pretty well balanced in theatre at the moment. Do you mean in terms of numbers?
Well, I'm interested in whether, I think acting-wise maybe, but I'm wondering about directors, and I'm curious to know how you feel about directors in theatre. Yes, we're seeing a few more females, film directors coming to the fore.
Yeah, I think there are many more female directors in television being used. Yes, I still don't think it's very high in. I think female participation in the last New Zealand Film Commission research that came out with statistics, it had been something like 12%, and that's over the entire film industry, not just directors. And I think they squeaked in with sort of 32%. But remember, that was the year that Ward came out and had 8 directors in. So I don't think I can't say that they're healthy statistics there. In terms of the theatre, obviously the thing about acting is it's an unsegregated occupation. The job of acting is the job of acting, whether you're a male or female. However, women have systematically different experiences, employment experiences. For instance, when you get older, the roles start declining. There's much more of a decline for women than there is for men. So as men get older, there are still more roles available, and they're playing them at an older age, and that significantly declines for women. Also, you'll notice that a lot of young female actresses might be offered parts that have a lot of sexuality in them, and I would say that that theatre is, in a way, and that's probably why 70% of my life has been in the theatre, and possibly why I'm still working, is that, that seems to be the last sort of bastion of the complex female, because the plays are more plot-driven and, less sort of focused on your sexuality and your, fleeting shots of this and that. I was lucky enough to perform in a film called Vermilion, which I shot a couple of years ago, and there, how rare was that for me as a 55-year-old then to have a role that, I could use every part of me, it was a really complex female that could use all my life experience, and was a sexual being and not a grandma or something. I think we're incredibly youth-focused. So theatre and radio definitely come out better in this area than television or film.
And Jennifer, just finally, you are one of the 3 Kiwibank New Zealander of the Year finalists. And of course, we're speaking before the winner has been announced. But how do you feel about being a finalist, and what would it mean to you to be announced as the New Zealander of the Year?
Look, it's a true honour to be up there with Professor Jane Harding and Peter Beck. My jaw sort of hasn't lifted off the ground yet. When I was told it was one of the 10, I went, what? And then my jaw fell further when I was one of the top 3. And I'd stand up for either of those two should they win that award. But look, I'm thrilled that the arts is seen as significant, and obviously it's a deep honour for me. And And I think probably the fact that I've been a great champion of Te Reo Māori would be, in there as well. So, I have no idea who nominated me. It's not something you put yourself forward, but I'm truly honoured to be out there for that. I think it's wonderful.
Well, I think it's wonderful that you're being recognised for all the support that you give and provide. So I think it's absolutely wonderful. And thank you so much for your time today. As usual, as always, a pleasure to talk to you.
Tēnā koe, ngā mihi. Tēnā koe, Francesca.